newspapers, posted on the bulletin board of City Hall and on the doors of the 3 schools as required in the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, and as amended by PL 2020, Chapter 11. Mrs. Law, can you lead us in the flag salute, please? Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Conover. Mrs. DeChica? Dr. Myers?
Here.
Dr. Dalton? I'm sorry, I skipped you. Dr. Dalton?
Here.
Mrs. Platt?
Here.
Mrs. Samuelson?
Here.
Mrs. Lau?
Here.
Mr. Sweeter?
Here.
Not my night. And Mrs. Endicott?
Here.
Thank you.
We have a motion to approve the minutes, our regular meeting from October 15th, 2020, as well as our executive session from that evening as well.
Motion, Lott.
Thank you.
Second, Samuelson.
Was that Mrs. Loud who first?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I could not hear her. All right. And who was the second?
Mrs. Samuelson.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Chico? She's not here? No. Okay.
Mrs. DeChico's here.
Oh, okay. Did not hear her. So Mr. Conover is the only person that's not here?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. DeChico?
Yeah.
Mrs. Samuelson?
Yes.
Dr. Myers?
Yes.
Mrs. Platt?
Yes.
Dr. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter?
Yes.
Mrs. Lout?
Yes.
And Mrs. Endicott?
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. Okay, public forum. At this time, I'd like to open the meeting to the public. Public that is watching from home may participate by calling us at 927-1032. Please remember that public participation, each participant is limited to 3 minutes per statement. Give it 1 more minute. Okay, hearing nothing from the public at this time, public comment is closed. We will move on to presentations. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Carney Ray Yoder, who will be presenting on staff recognition.
Well, I'm very excited to get back to this process, something that we have been trying to do for a while. So I'm excited to get back to recognition, where recognition is well-deserved. First, I would like to recognize our facility staff. I've told them this in meetings before, that we wouldn't have been able to open, and we wouldn't have been able to make everything work the way that it has without your support and your hard work. And I wanted to take an opportunity to say thank you on behalf of the district and thank you on behalf of the Board of Education and all the families, because you take care of us and make us safe. So I really do appreciate all of you for everything that you do, and making sure that we have everything taken care of every single day and responding to emergencies. So if you can join me, Mr. Waniak is going to be handing out the certificates for me, our supervisor, and I just want to take an opportunity to recognize you. So Mr. Waniak, can you step in the middle? You handsome devil, you? Okay. I know it's hard to hear with the mask, so I apologize. So first up is Melissa Bell. Thank you, Melissa. Chris Gitsis. Okay. Alan Horan. Okay. I still want to say their names. Anthony Leon. I won't hold that mask against you, Anthony. A Giants fan. Timothy Johnson. Thank you. Anthony, I'm just playing. Frank Brunetti. Garo Dolzaban. I never say your last name right, Garo. I'm so sorry. Dolbezian. Garo Dolbezian. Thank you, Garo. Steve Fonte. Kenny Johnson. Jeff Kendall. Jim Waniak, right there. Ed Doran, Michelle Johnson, and Jim Simon. And if I could have a round of applause for our facilities department, they are fantastic, and I'm very appreciative of all your hard work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate what you do all the time, but particularly this year. Thank you.
All right. And next up on the recognition, we're going to actually
Hello,
be
Mr.
bringing
Conover.
in, I apologize. I'm going to take this off since I'm not going to be within 6 feet of people.
That's okay.
Okay.
If 1 second, I just want to alert everyone that Mr. Conover has entered the meeting, so you can update the record, please. Hi, Mr. Conover.
Hello.
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
Thank
go ahead,
you.
proceed.
Appreciate it.
Just wanted Dr. Romer to be aware.
Of course, of course. Okay, so we're going to actually bring in our staff and our administrators to do recognition virtually for our teachers. So I would first like to ask if Mr. Straka, if you can please bring in Kim O'Brien and Anne-Marie Wagner-Fain and Dr. Koss, along with Maria Fernandez Mora. Maria's not on. Well, I'm still going to let them recognize Maria. So Maria is actually one of our support staff members from last year at New York Avenue, and I wanted to make sure that she was recognized. So if recognize her, and then Kim will translate for us so that when she watches this back, she's able to get the full picture of how grateful we are for her.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I have the privilege to talk to you tonight about Maria Fernandez. Maria came to our district in the spring of 2019. She was originally hired as a temporary paraprofessional for the remainder of that school year. Maria became a member of the New York Avenue family quite quickly because of her kind spirit and gentle approach to our students. There was no debating that we wanted Maria to become a permanent member of the school community, and she agreed and spent that summer with our extended school year program before joining the preschool disabilities team the next fall. Maria is described by both administrators and colleagues as positive and flexible. She has a calm and welcoming demeanor that lends itself well to her role. My dog Maggie agrees. Maria brings love, fun, and inclusion to our students and also challenges them to grow. She easily adapts when needed and stays optimistic during challenging times that many others could not handle with the grace and skill that she does. Her ability to assist in bridging the communication gap with our Spanish-speaking families has been immeasurable. So we consider her very willing, very deserving of this title of Educational Services Professional of the Year, and we continue to be proud to have her as part of our little family. Congratulations, Maria, and thank you.
Mrs. O'Brien, do you think you can try to put that in some translation for me?
You think we have the mute button down by now? All right. María llegó a nuestro distrito en la primavera de 2019, originalmente como paraprofesional temporal, pero por el resto del año escolar, María se convirtió rápidamente en miembro de la familia de New York Avenue debido a su espíritu amable y su trato amable con nuestros estudiantes. No se debatió que queríamos que María se convirtiera en un miembro permanente de la comunidad escolar y ella estuvo de acuerdo y pasó el verano con nuestro programa de año escolar extendido antes de unirse al equipo de pre-K en el próximo otoño. Los administradores y colegas describen a María como positiva y flexible. Tiene un comportamiento tranquilo y acordar que se adaptaba bien a su papel. María trae el amor, la diversión y la inclusión a nuestros estudiantes y los desafía a crecer. Ella adaptaba fácilmente cuando es necesario y se mantiene optimista durante los tiempos difíciles que muchos otros no podrían manejar. La capacidad de María para ayudar y crear la brecha de comunicación con nuestras familias hispanohablantes. Ella merece el título de especialista de apoyo educativa del año y estamos orgullosos a tenerla como parte de nuestra pequeña familia. Felicidades a María y muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Señora O'Brien. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you being here tonight. So, and next we'd like to recognize, so congratulations, Maria. I will make sure that you have your beautiful certificate taken care of and brought to you as soon as possible. So next up we have Mrs. Lee, along with Mrs. Fisher and Ms. Sustayano for recognition for Teacher of the Year and our support services, educational support staff member of the year for Dawes Avenue School. Take it away, Mrs. Lee.
Sue Fisher as the 2019 and 20 Teacher of the Year. Sue is up. Am I muted?
Nope, you're good. You're good. We hear you.
Sorry. I have something on my screen that says something. Sue is a dynamite teacher and human being. She works with some of the most challenging students and has made teaching not a job, not even a career, but a way of life for her. When the school closed last spring, Sue was the first to voice her concern about getting her students back into the classrooms. She made home deliveries of materials, mentored parents on how to best work with their students, and never gave up communicating. Once back in the building, there was one student who opted to stay at home and learn, but that didn't stop Sue. She was out to his house weekly to drop off assignments and supplies, pick up work, and support the family. Over the past 26 years, 18 of them in Summers Point, Mrs. Fisher has touched many lives. I can see her on Instagram following college-age students now that she's had in the past, still encouraging, still praising, and still being part of their life. Thank you, Sue, for all you do.
Mrs. Fisher, we can't thank you enough for everything that you've done. Would you like to say a few words?
Me? say word. Thank you. It's about it.
We appreciate you very much. Thank you so much for all you do for our students. All right, Mrs. Lee.
Next up is Sue Staiano, Nurse Sue Staiano, our educational specialist, another dynamite professional and human being. I was so lucky the day Nurse Sue walked into my office for an interview during my very first month as principal of the Dawes Avenue Elementary School. We've worked side by side for the past 20 years, and I have witnessed her caring dedication to the students as well as the Summers Point families and staff. She not only treats those playground injuries, but works with families to support wellness in both physical and mental health. She has brought dental care to the school. She's helped students manage chronic medical situations so that they can return to school and be part of the school system. She provides mental health tips and physical health tips weekly to the students. She talks about hydrating, and she really gives us motivation to have a healthy lifestyle. She even plants and maintains our garden. You can see her out there in the summer, weeding away, maintaining that wonderful garden. So Sue and Sue, you're both dynamite, you're both amazing, and you deserve this recognition. Congratulations. And I promise when this pandemic is over, we will do a lunch.
Yeah, absolutely. We will celebrate. Can I have a round of applause for our Teacher of the Year and our Support Services of the Year? Thank you, Sue and Sue. I like that. Sue and Sue. Okay, Mr. Straka. And I promise there will be a bigger celebration once we're through this pandemic. If it means we have to recognize 2 or 3 years worth of staff, we will make sure it happens. Next up is Mrs. Supp and Mr. Polito and Mrs. Klemick.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm trying to take myself off mute here. So before I begin, I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of our faculty for everything that they've been doing. This has definitely been a challenging time, and they really have gone above and beyond. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of them. And on behalf of Mr. Thomas and myself, I have the honor to recognize 2 very distinguished staff members that represent Jordan Road School as the 2020 Governor's Educators of the Year. So we are starting with Ms. Klemick, who is our Educational Services Professional of the Year. Ms. Joyce Klemick serves as the LDTC for Summers Point School District and as a child study team member and caseworker for Jordan Road School. And this is her 20th year with us. She is extremely enthusiastic, empathetic, and compassionate with her profession and our students. And she works as a constant advocate for our students, their individual needs, and their success during their time here at Summers Point Schools. Ms. Klemick's focus is always to ensure that all students have equal access to the programs offered here at our schools. She works to meet all the special needs of our students to provide an excellent education and experience here at Jordan Road School. Her decisions are data-driven with the ultimate goal of student achievement. Joyce collaborates with all of her colleagues and administration alike. She works with her fellow team members to develop plans that are specific to students' learning goals and backgrounds. She is in constant communication with staff about any changes that are made to students' learning plans and ensuring that all IEPs are met with fidelity. She also keeps parents informed on student progress regularly, serving on not only the CST, but also our INRS team. Ms. Klemick is a true professional and a go-to staff member here at Jordan Road School. And she's always working with all of our faculty to make JRS the best place it can be. She is dedicated to keeping everyone comfortable, safe, happy, and loved, and always doing it with a smile on her face and a stylish outfit. We are so lucky to have her. Thank you very much, Ms. Klemick.
Mrs. Klemick, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, just thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to work with everyone. Jordan Road been a great place. The whole district's been a great place. And I appreciate everything that, the board that's there, everything they do for the community. It's a wonderful place to be. I don't know why anybody would want to be anywhere else. So thank you so much.
I agree, Mrs. Clemick. Thank you for all you do for our students. We really appreciate it. And Mrs. Sup, you're up again.
Okay.
Okay, so now moving on to our 2020 Teacher of the Year, Mr. Phillip Polito. Mr. Phillip Polito is an exceptional educator, devoted to his profession, his students, and the Summers Point community. This is his 8th year with our district. Phil is certified in both ELA and special education, and he integrates the arts regularly into his lessons and the curriculum, incorporating his theater background into his instruction. He challenges his students, keeping them engaged in the content, allowing students to feel empowered to reach new levels, regardless of their skill set, abilities, and special needs. Students work to reach their highest potential for Mr. Polito. Phil is involved in many school, district, county, and state level committees and programs, including Renaissance, standards-based grading, Title I, SKIP, arts integration, DIAC, A-Mentor, INRS, peer coaching, creative collaboration, 21st century career and life standards review, and professional development facilitator. He is also involved in community programs such as the Summers Point Foundation for Education. He's an adjunct professor for Stockton University and a consultant and director of education programs at the Gateway Playhouse. Mr. Polito is always meeting to collaborate and problem solve with colleagues, administration, committees, and community members to ensure that our students have the best school experience possible. He works together with parents toward the success of all students using data and observation to provide individualized instruction to each student. Mr. Polito is an extremely passionate educator, and teaching is his calling. He embodies the qualities of a Teacher of the Year, and I am happy to work alongside him. Thank you so much, Mr. Polito, for all you do.
Mr. Polito, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. I would like to thank everyone. This journey was not taken alone for me. So I'd like to thank my students, my colleagues, the administration of the Summers Point School District, and the Board of Education for really allowing me to be able to fulfill my passions in the town and the school I grew up in.
Well, Mr. Polito, while we're on the topic, I can obviously not follow Mrs. Sup with her great explanation of everything that you do, but I would like to take an opportunity to also recognize you as our Atlantic County Teacher of the Year, which was the most awesome call that I have ever received. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank you again for all you do. I'm excited you're going to represent our county statewide, and I'm looking forward to many, many great things to come. You are definitely a team player and definitely someone we can go to, and I really do appreciate all of your support for the district.
Thank you so much, and I am honored to represent the Summers Point School District across the county.
Thanks, Mr. Polito. We'll make sure we get everybody's certificates. Thank you so much to our administrators for everything that you've done and to being here tonight, and we'll get back to our meeting.
I thought we were going to do our round of applause now for our Jordan Road people.
Round of applause. Round of applause for Jordan Road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Carney, you're going to continue to present regarding the accepting the masks that we've received?
Yes, actually, I want to take an opportunity to thank the state of New Jersey through the Atlantic County Office of Education. They donated for us washable masks for students and staff. We already have quite a few from our PTO. However, it was really nice of them to provide us with more. So all staff received a 5-pack today. We picked them up on Wednesday. And then we have a lot of extras left for families that may need them. So I'm really grateful to the Atlantic County Department of Education and the state for helping us with that.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the student safety data system presentation.
And it's a really short presentation because it's not a whole lot of data. However, we are required every year, especially with our whole QSAC review, we are required to share this information. And as far as a number of yearly incidents at Jordan Road, it was only 22 that were reported, which is down significantly. And then we also have, as far as and I'm wondering if that part of this is our climate and culture programs that we have at our schools, but also the diligence of our administration and our staff. We actually have 0 incidents to report at New York Avenue and Dawes Avenue. So I just wanted to share that with you and put that on record that that is our report for the year.
Okay, I'm sorry, you said 29 incidents? Was that
22 for Jordan Road.
For Jordan Road, okay. And are they the HIB incidents for the year, or are they all together?
It's the overall
discipline?
incidents,
Right.
discipline incidents
Discipline,
reported
right.
in the SDSS program. SDSS,
Right. Okay. Moving on to item D, is that the?
It's just to accept it, yes.
Okay.
We need to accept
So
that.
I need a motion to accept this year's SSDS report for the 2019-2020 school year.
Motion, Samuelson.
Second, Myers.
Thank you. Any questions? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Sweeter.
Yes.
Mrs. DeChico.
Yeah.
Dr. Myers.
Yes.
Dr. Dalton.
Yes.
Mrs. Platt.
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson.
Yes.
Mr. Conover.
Yes.
Mrs. Loud.
Yes.
And Mrs. Endicott.
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. Okay, moving on to communications and the superintendent's report. Dr. Carney Reader.
As far as the superintendent's report, most of the information that is on here is required, before I get into my statement, is required by our review that we have coming up, and I wanted to make sure that I got them on the agenda prior to our submission of our QSAC review, which we are in the process of putting together along with our budget. And I did want to take an opportunity to share a statement with the public as per some of the closures that we've had recently. And I wanted to just make sure everybody was aware of what the process was, because I know it is a little confusing regarding contact of a contact, close contact, etc. So, and I just wanted to share this comment. This is not an easy decision with any emergency situation, but during the current health emergency, the decision is a million times more difficult. How is it more difficult than calling a snow day, you may ask? This doesn't involve any type of radar or barometer to gauge if it will be safe for our students and staff to come to school. It also requires hours, if not days, of investigation, depending on the situation, interviews, phone calls, etc., with major agencies in the state that are backlogged with calls. Each individual situation, no matter what time of day or week, time of notification, requires the following: a call to the Department of Health to put on record and hopefully start contact tracing of any positive or potential positive cases. Call to the business administrator and supervisor of facilities to start deep cleaning and sterilization of all hotspots. Contact tracing by the superintendent along with the nurses and the principals. We have to determine whether they are within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more, cumulative or consecutive, over a 24-hour period. Even the health department has stated to us recently that this change from the CDC has made it even more difficult to contact trace and has taken longer to do. Identification of all students and staff that are impacted, contacting all impacted people in the district, following up with the health department on the process, recommendations by them, etc. Contact by the BOE, contact of the BOE, staff, and impacted families. And each case is an individual occurrence and requires a different amount of time. Any changes in the process are driven by discussions with the Department of Health, and if investigations have to be completed due to an inability to be tested immediately or other factors, it requires for a temporary shutdown to investigate, which has happened this week. The most important thing is for our students of Summers Point to be within our school walls. That is something that the administration and I believe, along with our teaching staff. We need them here for ourselves, and we need our students to be there for our students academically and emotionally. However, as a superintendent of the school district, I will not play roulette with the health of the students or faculty if I have control to do so. While I cannot predict anything, I can do my research and do what is best for all of the humans that I am charged with caring for on a daily basis. And I just wanted to share that with the public so that they knew the whole process. It is more detailed than that, and I did send out more information on the difference between a contact of a contact and a close contact to the staff. And the difference is, if you are within 6 feet for the 15 minutes or more consecutive or cumulative over a 24-hour period, you are considered a close contact. If you are in contact with a close contact, you are considered a contact of a contact. The difference is close contacts have to quarantine for 14 days minimum, whereas contacts of a contact do not have to quarantine unless the close contact shows symptoms and has to go for testing. So that is a lot of what goes into determining when we have to shut down classrooms or quarantine people. And as our numbers are ramping up, because actually within the past couple of days, we've gone from 8.5% in Atlantic County to over 12%. Infection rate, we're going to have to be more careful and more diligent to make sure that everybody's safe. Are there any questions from the board?
Can you explain suspected cases and why we needed to close due to suspected cases?
Absolutely. When we don't have a determination, if they're showing symptomology, for instance, and they get a call with their doctor, and their doctor says that it sounds like it could be, we can't take a chance on the fact that it might not be. We have to be proactive and that wait for that testing, their testing results to come in, whether it's a student or anybody in the district. So that is something that we have to be careful with. And as soon as we find out that everything's clear, then we can go ahead and bring people back to the building. But that's within constant communication with the Department of Health. I've talked to them so much, they're getting used to talking to me and who I am from Summers Point. But I'm one of many. I mean, all of the school districts have had issues, and the Department of Health is extremely backlogged right now. Like we're helping do a lot of our own contact tracing because they just don't have enough people.
So the part that you explained for Ms. DeChico, is that the standard protocol that everybody has to follow, or is it one of those situations where there's some wiggle room and discretion can be used district to district?
There can be discretion, but the health department, normally what you do is you say, listen, I'm thinking about doing this, and they'll say, well, we think that that's a good idea, because there is a section of all of our documents that we have that allows us for a temporary closure for investigation. So, and that's 2 to 5 days. So that's, a lot of districts are doing that if they're just not sure, because they don't want to allow for people back into the building if the deep cleaning hasn't been done, or or there's a possibility of more people than one person being impacted.
To close a building or just to close a classroom?
Classroom, building, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm.
Using US keyboard.
I'm sorry. Oh,
Sorry about that.
I thought somebody was asking a question. Any other questions on the board? Okay, can I have, there were no HIB incidents reported, however, so can I have a motion to affirm that there were in fact no HIB incidents reported from September 10th through October 8th, please?
Motion, Dalton.
Thank you.
Second, Lot.
Thank you. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Samuel motion, second hand with
Mrs. DeChico?
Yes.
Dr. Myers?
Yes.
Dr. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson?
Yes.
Mrs. Platt?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter?
Yes.
Mrs. Locke?
Yes.
And Mrs. Endicott?
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. Moving on, can I have a motion to acknowledge that there were no HIB incidents reported from October 8th through November 12th, please?
Motion, Samuelson.
Second, Platt.
Any questions? I have roll call, please.
Dr. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Dr. Myers?
Yes.
Mrs. Platt?
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson?
Yeah.
Mrs. DeChico?
Yes.
Mrs. Locke?
Yes.
And Mrs. Endicott?
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. Okay, moving on to item D, the HIB self-assessment presentation.
I apologize that it's written as a presentation. It is actually just sharing of information on our self-assessment that we've completed, and we'll be working with the HIB ABC, anti-bullying coordinator, and the SEL committees, and all of our HIB initiatives that we have in place to work on our improving over the year, especially considering that we're in a virtual world. We're trying to focus a lot more on our virtual platforms and how we can make sure students are supported.
Okay, so do we have the self-assessment data from 1920 to approve from each building, or the scores, or?
The information's all in the, there's PDFs versions here within, we submitted everything as far as the anti-bullying Bill of Rights.
Okay, I don't see it in my it's not there as an attachment, so that's why
I apologize. I see it, but I don't know why you don't see it. Let me see if I can fix it.
Do you have the scores of each building? You can just say that, and then we can.
Yes.
Oh.
Sorry about that. Okay, so for the Dawes Avenue School, their self-assessment was a 69 out of 7, maximum 78. Jordan Road School was a 57 out of a 78. And for the New York Avenue School, it was a 61 out of 78. The overall district grade is a 62. So we have improvement, but I know that they have a lot of initiatives put in place that we're going to be working on throughout the school year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a motion to approve the HIB self-assessment scores for the district, for each building and the district for the 2019-20 school year, please.
Motion Dalton?
Thank you.
Second, Samuelson.
Any questions? May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. DeChico?
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter?
Yes.
Dr. Myers?
Yes.
Mrs. Platt?
Yes.
Mr. Conover? Mr. Conover? I can't hear Mr. Conover.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Locke?
Yes.
And Mrs. Endicott?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve items 5E through G, please? I'm not including H.
Right.
We do not have certified election results yet. So normally in November, this would be the meeting that we would be making a motion to approve those results, to accept those results. However, there are no certified election results in yet, so we will bypass that, but the motion is for items 5E through G, please.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second, Myers.
Thank you. Any questions?
What was the enrollment? I think it was 812 or 809
Actually, the total is 807.
with pre-K 3 and pre-K 4.
Yes.
7 total.
So it went down to since the previous month. So October was 809 and November is 807.
Yeah, for some reason, some of the attachments aren't coming up. I don't know if they're not coming up
they're not
for you
coming up
either.
on mine.
Yeah.
It's not an executive, you don't see it in executive at the bottom? Okay.
No, it's not letting
Well,
me.
I'm editing as we go, so I'll make sure that they get moved up.
That's okay. I remember reading it. I knew it was there because I remember reading it when you sent it out over the weekend, but it's not there now, so I couldn't refer back to it. Okay, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Dr. Dalton,
Yes.
Mrs. DeChico,
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson,
Yes.
Dr. Myers,
Yes.
Mrs. Platt,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
and Mrs. Endicott.
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. Moving on to communications and correspondence. This is not listed in my on my screen either. So I will read it because I happen to have it handy. So that's what I'm doing on my phone. Dated November 19th. Dear Dr. Carney Ray Yoder and the Board of Education, please accept my resignation from my position as school board member on the Summers Point Board of Education. My family and I are moving out of Summers Point, so I'll be vacating my seat effective 12/1/2020. I want to sincerely thank my fellow board members, Dr. Carney Ray Yoder, the entire Summers Point School staff faculty, and most importantly, the Summers Point community. Serving on the Board of Education has been a rewarding and insightful experience. Sincerely, Sarah Platt. Thank you, Sarah. May I have a motion to approve to accept the resignation of Mrs. Sarah Platt effective December 1st, and as well as put out to the community a search for letter of interest for board members.
Motion, Samuelson.
Thank you.
Second, Myers.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mrs. Endicott, how would members of the public express their interest in filling Mrs. Platt's seat?
We will advertise and we will have the information advertised for people to submit a letter of interest for a Board of Education member. And we'll determine a date that we will accept those letters of interest until, and then the board will take action following that time.
Who do they make that attention to, you or superintendent?
Well, it will be advertised in the paper, and we'll put it on the website. They will send it to our board office. They can address it to me as the board president, but it will be sent. But all that information will be.
I'll make sure it's disseminated and that it's posted, and I'll post it on social media so that it's out there.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you for your service, Mrs. Platt.
Thank you, everybody. I'm sad to be leaving, but we're excited for this next step as a family. So I do appreciate everybody's support over the last couple of years, and I've really enjoyed my position and working with everybody in the schools, as well as my colleagues on the board. So if I could ever be of any service in the future to the board, please don't hesitate to let me know.
Thank you,
Mrs.
ma'am.
Endicott?
Yes.
Information was shared on the agenda, and I don't see it. It was on the executive part of it, where you have two policies with regard to a vacancy on the board, and the board has up to 65 days to fill the vacancy. Otherwise, the county superintendent then has the right to fill it. So in the past, we pulled what had happened before, and we do place it and add in the newspaper. Should go on Facebook. We'll be posting it around in the schools, indicating that your policy says a letter of interest, and you could include a resume. Would you like to have them send a resume also, or just a letter of interest?
They can send a letter of interest, and a resume is optional.
Okay.
But the
Okay.
65 days is from the time of the vacancy. So our 65-day clock would start not until after December 1st, because
Right. So that
once
takes
we
you.
accept this resignation, which we haven't done yet, then the time clock wouldn't start until after December 1st. So it looks like the cleanest way to take a new board member in would be in our January installation when we reinstall our other members. But again, that we can discuss that further as a board. But at this time, yes, we can still advertise, although once we accept this resignation, Mrs. Platt will still continue to be a board member until December 1st. She has submitted it earlier to give us time so that we can accept her resignation and put out the request for letter of interest, but still give us time so that, especially with a pandemic when people aren't meeting with each other as much, and B, the holiday season coming. So,
And what date would you like the letters of interest to be received here on your behalf by? To do it at the January meeting? I think you may want to do it before the winter break.
I would think that maybe we could submit the letters of interest by December 11th.
Okay. Terrific. Thank you.
Seems like a clean date. 1, 2, 3, it's 3 weeks. So yeah, that seems, are you guys okay with that? December 11th, good? Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Sweeter.
I refuse to take her resignation.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Sweeter.
Mrs. DeChico.
Yes.
Dr. Myers.
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson.
Yes.
Mrs. Platt, with regrets.
I don't know if am I allowed to answer? I didn't know.
I would say no, that you would abstain on this one.
Okay, abstain.
All right. Mr. Conover. Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Dalton.
Yes. Reluctantly.
Okay. And Mrs. Law?
Yes.
And Mrs. Endicott?
Yes, thank you. Motion
Thank you.
approved. Thank you, Mrs. Platt, for your service. You will be missed. We appreciate all that you have contributed to us, and good luck in your new home, your family.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on to committee reports. The committees did not meet in November, with it being a short month in the public education world. But do any committee chairs have anything that they would like to discuss or share at this time? Okay. As city council liaison, I have no new information to report as well. So we will move on to agreements, applications, and contracts. Can I get a motion to approve items 8A through I, please?
Motion, Lot.
Thank you.
Second, Samuelson.
Thank you. Any questions? We have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Samuelson,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter,
Yes.
Mrs. Platt,
Yes.
Dr. Myers,
Yes.
Dr. Dalton,
Yes.
Mrs. DeChico. Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
and Mrs. Endicott.
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. Okay, moving on to curriculum. Can I have a motion to approve item 9A, please?
Motion, Samuelson.
Thank you.
Second, DeChico.
Thank you. Any questions? I actually have questions, but again, I cannot open up the documents that are on the screen. I do not know why it is not here.
Mrs. Endicott, they pull up for us the public version of the agenda. If you log into your own board docs, then you'll be able to see the attachments.
Bill's looking for an assistant, Heather, so maybe you can come along board in the IT department.
I logged in because I can see all of what I could normally see up in the screen, which is why I thought it was logged in to an administrator's. Yeah, it's logged into your account,
Yeah,
Dr. Carney Rader. So I was under the impression that I have rights because I can see all of the things up in the right-hand screen that normally we would see. See, the public doesn't have access to any of that. But for whatever reason, when I go in, some of the attachments are there, but not all of them are.
Some of them are supposed to be.
So I can see.
See, now I see administrative questions.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like it all goes to the bottom, and I know that things were here because I've
Logged in as
it's logged in as you. Oh, now it's here, and it wasn't before. You just moved it. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's still at the bottom. It does. So for whatever reason, some of it is there, but other.
sorry about that.
No, that's okay. It's not your fault. It must be some. So my question that I have, I'm sorry, I'm waiting for it to load. Under, I'll try these off of memory. Under personnel, you had the the Jordan Road vice principal listed as the principal for this year on this contract that was to be submitted, that we're approving tonight. You had Dr. Kaz listed as well as
because we're not sure what's going to happen over the next couple months, and we wanted to make sure that we had a backup administrator available there for the grant purposes.
okay. So I think I had another question as well, but I can't. Pleasant. Okay, so the answer to the first one is the reason why you have two principal positions listed is just to have a backup person just in case. Does the grant require that you that anyone that may come in contact with the preschool children, they have to be listed as an individual on there?
That's part of the initial submission for the grant. Dr. Romer, do you want to take any of that? Because I know you worked on this with Dr. Koss.
Oh, yeah, he's just listed there as a backup. It's not a requirement, but I believe Dr. Koss, in the way she wrote the preschool grant right now, it's just saying that Dr. Koss would be, as well as with Mr. Thomas being possibly part of the New York Avenue School in the future. Our grant was due, so we had to get it in regardless of, what we put down there so that it was there.
Can we make amendments?
To do what?
Like if there, for some reason, things change over the next couple of months, are we allowed, like this is for our initial submission. So can we turn around and make some alter the application after if we need to?
Yes, we can. Just as we did, the preschool grant for this year was written by Mrs. Tucker, and she was listed as the individual who was on there. But then when Dr. Koss came on board, there wasn't really an amendment we had to do. What we had to show was what her percentage of her salary was charged off to the grant. Not that we're going to charge anything with Mr. Thomas's salary off unless something were to happen. But there's no real amendment. They've moved the financial part of the preschool grant from the middle of December. We now do not have to submit until March, I believe it's 15th, and we'll have our actual numbers by then. They used to make you do the curriculum part of it, then the financial part of it as a guesstimate. And then the budget came out, and then you used to get your preschool financial numbers. If Dr. Koss wrote him in there, it's only as if for some reason there is a need to have him in there, then we can adjust the budget accordingly.
Okay. And so, and my other question is for year 21-22, what are the new, every year there's extra services or extra things that are added as a part of this expansion. What are the new things that are coming for the 21-22 year that is not what is provided for students and families this year?
Well, Dr. Remmer, I don't know if you want to jump in, but I do know that part of our initial 3-year projection was our partnership with Gateway Head Start, and that has had a lot of issues. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. Our projection right now is to house, and Dr. Remmer, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're planning on housing all of our own and maybe looking for new partnerships in this upcoming year, but we still haven't solidified all of that because of COVID. So we're trying to work out those details.
I thought that in the second year that it expands to allow.
We were supposed to have an additional. It was supposed to go from 2 to 4 3-year-old classrooms
Right,
down
okay,
at
that-
Head Start, and
okay,
we were
that's what I was
supposed to
asking.
go look at going to a 3-4 program
Mm-hmm.
and district-wide, and that's kind of fallen apart over the past couple months.
Okay, so are there any implications, since the place that we've partnered with, that we've had those issues that we couldn't perform what was expected in this year's grant, will that have any implication on us with the state in terms of getting this money moving forward for next year?
I asked that question, and I was told no.
Okay.
Okay, because we can house the students here. We have the, enough facilities. The projections, what they tell you to do is your projections are you double your first grade class. Well, our first grade class, if you look at it, is 60 some students. The expectation would be that we would have over 120 some 3 and 4 year olds coming to the program. We do not have those numbers right now. And whether it's COVID related or not, that's an issue that everybody is dealing with right now. But I had asked that question. If we don't partner with Head Start, Gateway, or the 2 other programs that the state recommends out there, will that hurt our chances in getting the monies for the expansion, the 3-year-old grant? And I was told by the county office, no, that was not the case.
Okay, would our enrollment numbers affect it at all?
Our enrollment numbers may affect the amount of money we get. But however, when they put out the manual or the handbook for the financial part of it, which is they've just started rolling that out. If we were to take our double of our first grade class and put those numbers in there, our aid is based upon what the numbers that we place in there, not what an actual of what we have this year. So as we work through the budget, I think the state has a lot of issues that they're dealing with right now with all of these grants, because you'll see that the ESEA grant, they don't have enough people to approve last year's final grants. So now the county office BAs are going to be doing it. So I think they're working just through a lot of issues, and that's why they're holding off on making us submit a budget not until March.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else have any other questions? We have a motion to approve.
Motion, Samuelson.
Thank you.
Second, Myers.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I already took the motion to approve because I'm asking questions. I apologize. And I roll call, please.
Yes. Mrs. DeChico.
Yes.
Mr. Conover.
Yes.
Dr. Myers.
Yes.
Dr. Dalton.
Yes.
Mrs. Platt.
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson.
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter.
Yes.
Mrs. Lout.
Yes.
And Mrs. Endicott.
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. Okay, moving on to item 9B. And that is the proposal for the 2021 continuation of activities in athletics. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion, what?
Thank you.
Second, Samuelson.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions?
Right now, there's all intentions and everything's going to be moving forward with sports and everything.
Right now, the county superintendents have definitely put basketball on hold, although they just received, even though we just discussed this like 2 weeks ago, they just received the athletic directors just received an email from the county president that basketball is on hold, but volleyball still may occur later on in the school year. But the county superintendents are all in agreement that right now is not a time that we need to have contact sports inside. So we're obviously pushing stuff back until we know that it's going to be safer, if at all. So this is just to allow for different things like that could possibly be taken virtual. The plan has different areas because the kids do need some of that for their own mental health and social emotional stuff. But that is just a proposal to try to get things back on track for some activities for the students.
I have a question. So I thought that winter sports were not taking place because it's
Winter sports, we discussed it 2 weeks ago at the county.
Right.
And we were all under at least, and I could be wrong, but I was under the assumption that we were canceling as a group all sports.
Right. I was also, okay.
Now it seems that there was a letter, which I have to look into tomorrow. There was a letter that went out that basketball is definitely not happening, but volleyball may be moved back. So I have to look into that tomorrow with my colleagues.
But who did that come from? The
It actually
volleyball?
came from, because there's a county organization that oversees all the sports, and then there's the superintendent. So I just want to make sure I have that accurate information, and I will get that out to the board.
I didn't think that there was a county organization that oversaw
There
the
is
middle
a
school
county,
sports.
There's a county
Okay.
league, the Cape Atlantic League oversees what we do at the middle school level. And then there is obviously the NJ, I never get it right, NJSIAA.
Right, but that's for high school, not
Correct,
for middle
and
school.
but they actually just came out with a notice that I just put in there for you all today,
Mhm.
that they are considering just moving winter sports back and starting them later on, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with, but I want to take a look and find out, make contact to the county organization first before I look at that. But that would have to be a determination that we're going to actually start those sports back up, if at all. And that would be run through the board.
Okay, but if we approve this proposal this evening, then what we are approving is that all of the stipends that are listed on this proposal, we would be paying, regardless of whether or not the season has already passed and hasn't taken place, or the winter season could be canceled. Is that correct?
The stipends are actually the plan that's in there is pretty far down in the plan, but they actually have a prorated, and it depends on the actual activity happening. So if the activity doesn't happen, there is no stipend. If the activity takes place for a third of the season or a third of the activity time.
The halfway point.
Yeah, the halfway point. So there is a breakdown depending on the actual activities or athletics happening.
Right. It says that if they're canceled, they would still receive a portion of their stipend. So I guess my question about that would be, like, for fall sports that the season has come and gone and it didn't happen, us approving this evening would be giving the people listed for the fall sports a portion of a stipend for something that was never even completed. That's how this reads. And any winter sports that are now on the verge of being canceled, but there's still a possibility, we would be approving to pay for them as well. So I guess, for fall sports alone,
Because my understanding is because I've looked at this quite a few times, my understanding is that if the activity or athletic did not happen, there was no stipend. It was only if it made it to a halfway point, and then if it started, made it to a halfway point, and then was canceled, then there would be a prorated stipend.
Well, so it says in there, if it's canceled prior to the halfway point, they receive a third of their stipend, which, as Stacy's saying, I read that as if the season started, they don't really have to do anything, and as long as it gets canceled prior to the halfway point, they get a third of their stipend. That's how I read that. Because I don't see anything in there saying if it never happened. And I don't know, I'm saying this not knowing if we even started. Did we start fall sports at
We
all?
didn't do any fall sports.
you didn't know
activities.
fall sports, but it reads, if the club is canceled prior to the halfway point, they should receive 1/3 of their stipend. So that means almost $11,000 worth of stipends for the fall. We would be paying out 1/3 of that when that season was canceled.
Well, never happened. To me,
It was canceled.
To me,
the season was canceled.
well, it just never happened, but we could, and Lou, if you're there somewhere, could we put a caveat that that the sports would have to be approved on an individual basis in order for them to even begin?
That was my next question. Okay.
Because that's something that I would think would be easy to add to the motion, that, you know, it would have to be, the individual sports and activities would have to be individually approved for those stipends to occur, for those activities to occur. Lou?
Yes, the suggested language you can add, of course.
Okay. So
couldn't you just prorate it for the weeks that the activity occurred?
well, I think I do hear the concern, because if it hasn't started at all, it's not that it's been canceled, it just hasn't started. So there shouldn't be stipends for like the fall at all, because there were no activities or athletics in the fall. So,
But there weren't activities because they were canceled by they canceled the season was canceled. So I guess my concern is if we're approving this as it reads, since that season was canceled and never took place, this would be stating that these people would be in, you know, these positions would be entitled to 1/3 of that stipend. So I just, that was my question, as well as the part that you had just said to Mr. Greco in terms of, should we be approving this all together, or should we be pulling it out to approve specific activities / stipends, you know, as appropriate, you know, on an individual basis?
well, actually, here's my question to the board, and I think that this can be adjusted. If we accept the proposal with the caveat that all sports and activities must be approved on an individual basis by the board in order to consider that they've started. And I don't know how, Lou, I'm not really sure how that should read, but I do understand what the board's saying. Like, we should have some caveat in there that if they didn't occur, then it's not that it's been canceled, they just didn't occur. So there shouldn't be a stipend that goes along with that.
Well, the way it's worded, it says if it's canceled before it's half over. So isn't it implicit in that statement that it had to be approved to get to the halfway point?
That's their proposal. So that's why I'm saying.
Well, I think it's implicit in that proposal that in order to get to the halfway point, you have to approve it to begin. So if you never approve it to begin, there's no halfway point.
Right, but those positions are
listed. The
listed
halfway
in this
point, it means
proposal.
I think it's fine the way it is.
But Lou, those positions are listed in this proposal. So we would be approving the positions. We would be approving the positions that are listed, the ones that we're talking about. So then therefore, those positions would be approved by this motion. And then because it was canceled, do you see what I'm trying to say? That's why I'm saying I don't know why they're even there. Because if the sports, the fall sports that I'm talking about are listed here with the stipend dollar amount and the individuals. So by us approving this motion, we are approving to confer those stipends of that have already passed, but then since the season was canceled, now there would be a 1/3 entitlement.
We could actually take the positions out of the proposal and make them an approval on an individual basis, except the general skeleton of the proposal, but take the people and the stipends out of the proposal. You see what I'm saying? And then that has to be approved on an individual basis when they're able to occur.
Yeah, take the names and positions out and just adopt it saying in the event that activities are approved, you would do what they're suggesting without listing them and leaving open the obvious outcome that they may not get approved at all.
Okay. So I guess we could put in the notes, and Dr. Romer can help us with this, put in the notes that the positions and the people for the positions and the stipends themselves have to be approved on an individual basis.
So we would be approving the 2021 proposal Mr. Greco, approving the proposal without
Well, the
the,
proposal says it's subject to district level decisions. So the protection you're looking for is built in there. If your decision is it's not going to go forward, it's not going forward. So it's already built in. If you want to add it, you can add it.
no, what I'm saying is we're removing the positions and the stipend amounts. So we're accepting the proposal minus the listed positions and stipends amount. That's what we would be approving. And that any.
I have a question for Michelle.
Okay.
Michelle, what is the impact of not approving anything at all tonight and deferring this decision until the decision on whether or not the activities proceed is made?
The impact, that's a great question.
That's a good question because that was my question as well, because we've already approved our athletics director. So is there not a reason why the athletics director cannot continue with finding out in terms of what's happening with this season? And then we
haven't approved the activities director, which would oversee all of the activities that could occur as well.
You mean the clubs?
Yes,
activities. But the clubs are all virtual, right?
No, we have no
yet.
clubs. We approved the athletic director last meeting, but we have not approved the activities director.
No, but I'm just like in the form. I'm just reading the description of the clubs, and it looks to me as if everything's going to be virtual. So there would be no reason other than lack of participation that they wouldn't take place, right?
Probably.
I mean, other than kids not signing up for a certain club. They'll all probably they're kind of in their own bubble versus the sports because they can just do it all virtually.
Correct.
So yeah, I guess to piggyback on Lou's question, if we postpone this until next meeting and we'll have more insight as to whether or not there'll even be a winter season, that would give us time to pull out all of the names and stipends, and B, having that additional information, we would be able to add in the positions that we would only be approving and just not insert the ones that are non-applicable, I guess, is my question.
I'm just trying to think about the topic itself. Like I do feel we have to have some kind of plan because I think the concern is that we wouldn't offer opportunities for our students for activities and clubs because it is in sports. But if we don't have them, it would be nice to have a plan to try to bring them back, but that it would all be contingent upon individual approval. Like that's my thought process. I put the caveat in there because my hope was that then it's up to us as a district whether these things are going to even occur. Sorry.
Okay. So you're saying that waiting 3 weeks until December 17th isn't, well, not counting Thanksgiving.
Well, it's not an issue. I mean, we could talk about it and we could defer it to committee and then come back to the next board meeting because there really is nothing going on right now.
I'm thinking because of the short month, the holiday, it's a, you know what I mean? It's not that long in terms of students not receiving, potential services that and activities they could be receiving, but it would buy us a little bit of time to hammer out some of the concerns and find out what's happening with the winter season on a more, I know they've been saying for a couple of weeks, they're making an announcement, but at that point, I think we would we would definitely have the information because the winter season will be starting in December. So it would, and since I think the sports are what the biggest question is, and what you had said about indoor sports, and the fact that we have an athletic director that's still working to get all that information and going to meetings, doing that as a part of the athletic director stipend. I think that that's important, that that's taking place. But what Lou had stated in terms of, is that something that we can wait to maybe talk about more in committee to have that additional information? Okay, so then I'd like a motion to postpone to our December meeting, please.
Motion, Samuelson.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson,
Yes.
Dr. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter,
Yes.
Mr. Conover.
Yes again.
Oh, I don't know why you're in here twice, so whoever I miss, Mrs.
You missed-
DeChico, Mrs.
Yeah.
Platt.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
You
Mrs.
forgot Mrs.
DeChico.
Law and Mrs. Undercut.
No, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
I'm sorry. You said thank you, so I thought you were done.
No. I was saying thank you to Mrs. Platt because I'm looking at the list. Mrs. Locke
Yes.
and Mrs. Endicott.
Yes. Thank you. Motion approved.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Laud, if you could please add that to our student and community affairs agenda, so we could hammer that out, and hopefully by the time we meet on December 7th,
I will make sure
we'll have updated information that will enable us to proceed in a better fashion than all of the uncertainties that exist right now. Okay, moving on to facilities. I have a motion to approve item 10A, please.
Motion, Myers.
Second, Dalton.
Thank you. Any question?
I had a question. This will just be outdoors. They won't have the buildings open for bathrooms or anything like that,
No.
correct?
Nope.
Okay.
And there's going to be one that we discussed it in the foundation meeting that we had for planning, and we were talking about we're going to have one entrance coming in and coming out, so we can keep track of the numbers of people that are in. They're going to be marking with paint, the spray paint, the grass to do social distance barriers, and the way that they're going to set it up is they're going to have basically a walk path around the outside and a walk path in the middle to make sure that all the vendors are separated, and also there's plenty of space for people to walk around in a decent pattern. So,
do you know what this vendor fair entails? I mean, obviously it's a fundraiser for the foundation, but did they say what?
Yeah, what they're doing is it's Small Business Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
And they're doing it to where for $30 you can get in as a vendor. I think they have 24 or 25 vendors so far. And basically people can come and they can shop, and so they collect the money from the vendors to participate. And then they're also, part of the requirement was to submit, to give a couple items for raffles. And they're going to
Okay.
be doing that as well.
Okay, and there's already 24, 25 people already. Oh, okay.
They weren't sure because there's a lot of things going on that day, but they got a nice response. So it looks like it's going to be a pretty decent event for them.
I went to an event similar to it in up at Smithville a few months ago in the part of the heavy duty part of the COVID stuff at the beginning. My daughter was at a Galway Go Green table, and they were selling just basically not selling, but just promoting their program for Galway Go Green. And they had a bunch of farm market type of vendors and things like that. And they definitely followed all the protocols for everything, very spaced out. Everything was very organized. I imagine it's going to be very similar to that. And they, it was a beautiful day when they had it up there. That's going to be the difference, I guess, because Thanksgiving weekend can always be a little dicey, but for the following couple of weeks. So, but I think it could work without much problem based on Mr. Polito's description of it and everything that they've done to think about it and discuss it. And they're dealing with some people that are used to these kind of weekend events. So I'm sure they've been pivoting like all organizations are to survive. And it sounds like it was a good idea and people could use some entertainment.
And there's going to be, Josie Kelly's is actually having their food truck there. So they'll have the food truck blocking one end so that people can't come in over on the 10th Avenue side, or 10th Street side, and then they'll have the one entrance off of Jordan Road. So they can keep track of who's in and who's out, make sure we're staying within the numbers.
Okay. Any other questions? A motion, my roll call, please.
Mrs. Platt?
Yes.
Mrs. Zachico?
Yes.
Dr. Dalton?
Yes.
Dr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson?
Yeah.
Mrs. Lott?
Yes.
And Mrs. Endicott?
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. For the public who is watching, please come on out and support the Summers Point Foundation for Education as well as our Summers Point businesses on November 28th. Do we have a time?
It's actually going to be, I want to say 9 to 2. So it'll be 9 to 2.
Saturday the 28th, 9 to 2. Great. I haven't seen any advertisements. Were they waiting for this approval to start advertising? Yeah. Okay. Okay, I hope that works out for
They
them.
started getting vendors, but they wanted to wait to have approval for the property.
Okay, moving on to finance. Can I have a motion to approve items 11A through F, please?
And Mrs. Endicott?
Yes.
We need to take out letter C because we have not received approval on our carryover or original ESEA grant.
Okay, I was going to ask about that. Okay, great. So I'm sorry, a motion to approve, we're removing item C. So a motion to approve items 11A through B and D through F, please. Thank you, Dr. Harmer.
Motion, Samuelson.
Thank you.
Second, Myers.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'd like to thank Ms. Wagner for going out and getting those donations, those 6 Chromebooks. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Thank you. Any other questions? May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mrs. Zachico?
Yeah.
Dr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter?
Yes.
Mrs. Platt?
Sorry, yes.
That's okay. Mrs. Samuelson?
Yes.
Dr. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Lott?
Yes.
And Mrs. Endicott?
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. I'm going to skip over personnel and we'll come back to that, but we'll move to policies. Can I have a motion to approve item 13A, introduce these policies into first reading?
Motion, Samuelson.
Thank you.
Second, Zachico.
Thank you. Any questions? May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mrs. Zachico?
Yes.
Dr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter?
Yes.
Mrs. Platt?
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson?
Yes.
Dr. Dalton,
Yes.
Mrs. Loud,
Yes.
and Mrs. Endicott.
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. Moving on to 13B, and I have a motion to approve the policy listed as the second and final reading.
Motion, Samuelson.
Thank you.
Second, Lost.
Thank you. Any questions? May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. DeChico,
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter,
Abstain.
Dr. Myers,
Yes.
Mrs. Platt,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Dr. Dalton,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
and Mrs. Endicott.
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. We have no professional services this evening. And can I have a motion for items 15, 16, and 17? The transfer of funds, secretary, and treasurer's financial reports.
Motion, Samuel.
Thank you.
Second, Dalton.
Thank you. Any questions? May I have a roll call, please?
Dr. Myers,
Yes.
Mrs. DeChico,
Yeah.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Dr. Dalton,
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter,
Yes.
Mrs. Platt,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
and Mrs. Endicott.
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. Moving on to the bills list. Have a motion to pay the bills for this month, please.
Motion, Myers.
Thank you.
Second, Samuelson.
Thank you. Who did the bills this month?
Mr. Sweeter.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeter. Does anyone have any questions? May I have roll call, please?
Dr. Dalton,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeter,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Dr. Myers,
Yes.
Mrs. Platt,
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson,
Yes.
Mrs. DeChico,
Yeah.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
and Mrs. Endicott.
Yes, thank you. Motion approved. Okay. At this time, I would like a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel.
Motion, Samuelson.
Thank you.
Second, Myers.
Thank you. Be it resolved by the Board of Education of the City of Summers Point, the County of Atlantic, New Jersey, and that upon passage of this resolution, go into executive session to discuss personnel and contracts. I'm sorry, we have contracts to discuss as well. So personnel and contracts. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are in executive at this time.
Link is going out right now.
We will return shortly. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm like, I think I'm gonna have to bring my credit card.
The link is in your email for executive. That's awesome. I'm glad.
Can you hear me, guys?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay. And we are.
I always check, sorry.
That's okay. We are back in public. Okay, we will go to personnel. Can I have a motion to approve items 12A through J, please?
Motion, Samuelson.
Thank you.
Second, Dalton.
Thank you. Any questions?
I just wanted to confirm that all of the fieldwork placements will be virtual to enhance social distancing within the classroom.
Yes. You are correct, Mr. Samuelson. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, at the end.
Okay.
Then. May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Sweeter,
Abstain.
Dr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mrs. Samuelson,
Yes.
Mrs. Platt,
Yes.
Dr. Dalton,
Yes.
Mrs. DeChico,
Yeah.
Mrs. Long? Is it, yes?
She says yes.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Endicott?
Yes. Motion approved. Okay, we are going to open to public comments. For anyone who is watching from home, if you would like to participate in public comment, please dial 927-1032. And please remember, anyone participating in public comment is limited to 3 minutes.
Okay, please state your name and your address, please, for the record.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Hold on 1 second. We're having difficulty hearing. Hold on. Okay, try it again.
Do you want me to do my name again too?
Yes, please.
Okay. My name is Jennifer Rowe. My address is 2705 Erie Avenue, and I'm a teacher at Jordan Road. I know that it was tabled this evening, and I believe it's been brought up a couple of times, but in reference to the clubs and sports, especially with the potentially canceled or postponed ones, can you clarify if virtual clubs and sports are still an option, please? Last year, our district passionately pushed for virtual clubs and sports during the pandemic shutdown. Wouldn't this still be a priority for our students' well-being, social, emotional learning? And in addition, if we're not providing these virtual opportunities for our students, where will that budgeted money be reallocated? As staff, we've been repeatedly told that there is a budget shortfall. This year, many curriculum, grade level curriculum orders were not placed or cut dramatically, and our budgeted fall sports didn't even happen, so those stipends were not paid out either. These examples just further demonstrate the impact on our staff and students. If we as a district together continue to take away beneficial program opportunities, how does that align with the priority of the social and emotional well-being of our students and staff?
Thank you for your comment, Mrs. Rowe. Ms. Rowe.
Thank you.
There's another one trying to call in, so. If there is anyone for public comment that would like to call in now, the line is free, 609-927-1032. Hi, please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Josh Tostovan. My address is 5 Alex Drive in Millville, New Jersey. I'm also the SPEA president. I'd just like to thank Dr. Carney-Yoder and the Board of Education for recognizing the hard work and sacrifices made by our custodial team here in Summers Point. And I want to echo those sentiments. Many of the reasons tonight are the very reasons why we, the members of PA, voted to add the custodians to our association. As you know, the board has refused to voluntarily recognize the custodians as part of our unit because this is important to us and we make our district, will make our district run more smoothly. We urge you to reconsider this decision, especially considering that we offer to forego negotiating new terms of employment during this transition. Now, to be clear, this means that it would not cost the board any money to recognize this group as part of our unit. Can you please shed some light on the reasoning behind the continued refusal, especially now that you know that doing so would not cost the board any money? And also, I just want to kind of echo what Ms. Rowe said. I'm very concerned that the board postponed the club and sports proposal. This proposal was submitted well over a month ago, and we thought it would have been reviewed and approved at last month's board meeting. And we were looking forward to the approval at tonight's meeting. So this is just going to further delay the activities that our students have been missing out on. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Tostovan.
Give it one more minute. Okay, public comment is now closed. Board forum. Any members of the board like to speak?
On behalf of the Summers Point Education Foundation update from my committee work with them, I did attend their last meeting. They're planning a virtual fundraiser in the future. There will be more details about. In addition, obviously that Michelle had mentioned earlier, and a capital campaign is going to be one of their new pushes. They're going to have like a capital campaign program. We're going to do a bulk mailing to everybody in the community to support the Education Foundation and look for donations to come from individuals towards a capital campaign. So they're trying to, once again, like everything else, trying to pivot to be a positive funding source for the school district and the community. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members like to speak?
Just wanted to say thank you to Mrs. Platt for her time on the board. You will definitely be missed, but good luck in your next adventure.
Thank you. I will certainly miss my time on the board with everybody.
Any other members like to speak? I'd like to once again congratulate our teachers, educational service professionals, and all the custodians that you recognize this evening, and let them know how much we appreciate their service. And again, congratulate them for being recognized amongst their peers for a job well done. And I also like to wish everyone on the board a happy Thanksgiving, as well as the school community and the Summers Point community. I hope you have a wonderful, restful holiday. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion, Lot.
Thank you.
Second, Myers.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.